Hello and welcome to Ladies Corner with T. Ladies Corner works in partnership with Diversity TV to amplify the work of women everywhere. She's a registered nurse, a distinguished scholar, an associate professor here at the University of Alberta. She needs no introduction, ladies and gentlemen. For the very first time on Ladies Corner is Dr. Bukola Salami. Hello, Dr. Salami.
Thank you very much for having me.
Welcome to Ladies Corner.
Thank you.
Right, when you look at your accomplishments, your CV runs into 33 pages. I did go on LinkedIn yesterday and I had a look.
Yes.
What has been your greatest achievement?
My greatest achievement is what's not on my CV.
Okay, which is?
My two babies.
Oh, blessed. Oh, I
My
didn't
two
even think of that.
babies. My two babies are my greatest achievement. They bring smiles to my face, and yeah, that's my greatest achievement. So if you're looking at my overall greatest achievement, I would say my two babies.
And it should be, because your mom. Yeah.
But, there is, now if you say academic, my greatest academic achievement, that's probably...
What's been your greatest moment as an academic? Because you've won several scholarships, multitudes of awards. It runs into hundreds, maybe even thousands. Just joking.
Yes.
What's been your greatest academic moment?
It's hard to say. I think maybe I would reflect and say probably when I finished my PhD. Was probably a milestone when I got my SHIRK grant from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada to work on temporary foreign workers. That was a really, really good moment.
That's a big deal.
The Sigma Theta Tau International Honor Society of Nursing gave me an award, which I wasn't able to attend because I had just had a baby.
And that's the peak.
That is the highest nursing award for someone within the first 5 years of their career internationally. And I was the first Canadian to receive this award. So that was quite
that's a big deal.
When I learned that I got that.
Dr. Salami, when I look at you, I look online at your digital trail. I look at the work you've done. You operate with beasts, really. What's been pushing you? And you're a woman. Is that a sexist thing for me to say? You've done so well.
I don't know. I mean, I know I once spoke to my my doctoral supervisor, and she talked about the fact that I've exceeded
absolutely in every
her expectation. I think passion pushes me. Not passion for nursing as much, although maybe my nursing colleagues wouldn't want that, but passion for improving the health of immigrants. So when you think about it, you yourself, you're an immigrant, you know what you've been through in terms of how intersecting forces impact your life in many ways. So my passion doesn't just extend to like academic. There's also a personal connection that inspires that passion and drive to improve lives of immigrants.
Dr. Salami, look, we're both women, but you're a woman, you're a distinguished scholar. Let me tell you, you've on Facebook, on Twitter, in the past year, you have been in charge of 22 interdisciplinary studies. That's not an ordinary feat for an ordinary person.
I didn't actually count, but although there was a time I counted and I realized I was engaged in about 17 studies, and I am like, how do you do it? You have 2 children, you have an active husband, a full-time husband. A full-time, yeah. So I would say there's passion. I put in a lot of work.
Do they give you time off at work? Do you get special treatment? They say, okay, come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and get the rest of the days off. Is that what they do to make your life easy? I'm just asking.
No, but I've been on maternity leave for the past 1 year.
All right.
So
because you do a lot. I'm just trying to see how you're able to fit it in and you're still on top of your game.
I passion. And I would say I also get a good support. So my husband is supportive. He's one of those husbands that wakes up in the middle of the night to change diapers and also feed the
Okay.
babies.
Okay.
My mom is supportive.
Is she in Edmonton?
My mom was with us for the first 4 months after we had our baby, and she
Okay.
took care of the kids and
Okay.
did a lot
You
of
have
the
a
work.
set of twins?
We have twins,
Okay.
and my babies actually, they're not. I mean, they're not a handful. They're really
twins.
twins. I mean,
Yeah.
there is some trouble related to having twins, which is when one is sick, the other one is sick, and mommy
it's
is
two
also
for the
sick.
price of one,
Two
and
for
daddy,
the price of
and
one.
daddy goes down to.
But one of the beauties is sometimes, if you just watch both of them together and they just play with each other, sometimes they'll rub each other's hands, rub each other's.
How old are your twins now?
They are 10 months.
Oh, so you're brand new, but it's not up to a year then.
It's not up to a year.
And you're back at work.
I am not officially back.
Okay.
I am a professional volunteer right now.
You cannot give this up, can you?
Well, it's about finding a balance, right?
All right.
For what you love, and also for the lives of your children.
Intersection, you call it, finding the right intersection.
Yeah, finding the right. Yeah.
Okay, I want to know when you're here, who looks after your babies?
My babies, they go to daycare.
Okay.
So my babies go to daycare, and and I spend time with them too.
Okay.
So usually about 3 days or 4 days a week they're in daycare, and
right.
the other 3 or 4 days I'm with them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm kind of curious. You are a top player, and your husband is a doctor.
Yes.
So how does the balance of power work in your house?
Balance of power. What I've learned is to not struggle with power issues, and more of to focus on collective, and what are our collective goals, and how can we support each other towards meeting that collective goal.
Okay.
So it's not about, because when you engage in power struggle, then you're very likely to have conflict. It's going to affect the relationship. So I and Dr. Fiolo Keke, which you know very well, we've done some work related to gender relations in the home.
Okay.
And some of the things that affect gender relations is that, couples are in Nigeria or in other countries, the power relations is different, right?
Yeah. I
and
mean,
then they
African
come
men
here.
are very difficult,
Yes.
I think, to live
Yes.
with. Yeah.
And then they come here, and the power relations changes because now the woman has a bit more power. So then how do you negotiate that within a transnational context? So I think in some way my research, or the research I have done with Dr. Phil, has kind of helped me to situate things in a different way, related to gender and related to power relations.
Okay, so you're saying
home.
to me in a nutshell, your husband is not a typical Nigerian man.
Is a typical Nigerian man and also not a typical Nigerian man. So in some things he's typical, in some things he's not typical.
All right.
So a typical Nigerian man probably will not wake up twice in the middle of the night to feed the babies and change diapers
while
your slips off.
Yeah.
So in that way you would say yes, it's not typical. But there's also some typical Nigerian men things that he expects.
Pounded yam, maybe.
If Bukola can pound yam, that he expects. It's a balance. And I think in terms of, relating it to immigrant lives, that is one thing. When immigrants move to Canada or a place like Canada, there are some things sometimes that you pick up, and there are some things sometimes that you have to kind of let go of, right?
Yeah.
So, and oftentimes, people, when they look at African cultures, and also gender relations, and also issues of feminine and masculine ideals, people look at it from a very, very negative perspective. But then are there some things, within the African culture that we don't, that is good, that we want to
take on board,
and are there some things that we want to throw away? So one thing related to the African culture that my research on parenting practices has unraveled is issues related to respect. Respect in the home.
Right, let's talk about your work now. Let's go there. You're talking about your research, male and female, so the work you did with Professor Phil.
Yes.
Let's expand more on what your expertise is and what you found out. That's one thing I read about you is your research helps policy making in the community.
Yes.
So talk to us, please, about what you've discovered or learned or uncovered from your research.
So I've done about 35 to 39 studies that I'm engaged in, either as a co-investigator or PI. About 17 of that, I'm the one that lead. So I'll focus on those that I have led.
Right.
I started my work looking at living caregivers.
All right.
Nurses that migrate to Canada through the Living Caregiver Program
From
the Philippines.
Right.
And found issues related to exploitation and also the emotional labor that these people are engaged in while taking care of other people's children, and the pain that is so intense related to family separation and reunification, and some of the troubles that happen at the stage of reunification. I moved on to looking at temporary foreign workers and also issues of exploitation and how exploitation can actually lead people to different status, to choice of paths of different status that they face. Then I went on to looking at mental health of immigrants. And one of the things that we found there is the mental health of immigrants. We did an analysis of a Statistics Canada database, which had 17,000 participants. And we found that the mental health of immigrants declines after a period of 5 years.
What is wrong with Canada?
In Canada? Well, there's something called LD immigrant effect.
Okay.
It's well known around the world that in most countries, not all, immigrants tend to be elder when they first arrive than non-immigrants. And one main reason for that is selection factors. Okay. So, for example, when Canada is bringing in people, if you're an economic migrant migrating through the federal skilled worker program, sometimes called express entry, you do a medical exam. If you have cancer, you won't be allowed. So that means we are actually picking those that have the best health status.
Yeah.
Now, this is very different from refugees. Refugees, you can be any health status. But remember, refugees are only a small portion of the bigger immigrant population.
That's
so
right.
the population of immigrants overshadows the specific health needs of refugees. But when you look, the average immigrant that steps in Canada, their health on average is better than the average health of a Canadian. Now, after a while, they start reporting poorer health status.
Because of their work-life balance?
So there are different things that contribute to that.
Okay.
Income is a social determinant of health. And income is perhaps the biggest and has the strongest influence on social determinant of health. And one thing that leads to, income is employment. If you can't find employment because you arrive in a country and everyone is asking for Canadian experience, or everyone is, they are not saying Canadian education, but there is systemic discrimination in the system. You can't get a job in your field.
No, that's so terrible.
There are many people that are doctors, engineers, lawyers that work in nursing homes or work with people with developmental disabilities or work in factories.
This is a problem, isn't it?
So, when people have lower income, then they're more likely to report their health.
After a while, it starts to tell on their health.
After a while. So the two main factors in that study that we found that contributes to immigrant health is community belonging and income.
Right.
And what are the things that influence community belonging? When you're in your country, I know when I'm in my Nigeria, your next door neighbor, open your door.
Right. And you came here at 16.
I came here when I was around 16 years.
Okay, but you've been here maybe for half your life now.
Yes, I've been here for more than half of my life.
So this is now home.
So yes.
Yes,
so,
obviously.
Yes.
So how are you able to relate that to this?
You mean the
community, the way we live back home,
we
the
live back home.
You
know what? It's like people ask me sometimes, where is your home? And I'm like, oh, you mean where I live now? In Edmonton? Or do you mean Toronto, where I've lived most of my life? Or do you mean, Nigeria, where I see as home? So, I mean, the meaning of home is different for everyone.
It's subjective.
I think, for me, when we came, I still view Nigeria as my
home.
home. And my when I was in
That's
Nigeria, we used
interesting,
to always
actually.
go to my village, Efon. We
Okay.
used to always go to my village in December, and for some way somehow I still kind of view that as really my origin source. So
So,
I am
okay, so
still.
I'm trying to get this. In Nigeria, I'm sorry, where did you live? Was it Lagos, Ibadan, a
No, we
major
lived in
city?
Akure.
Okay, so you live in Accra, and then you travel to your, can I call it a village, Efron?
Do not
Call
let
it,
my uncle
is it a
hear
town?
you
All right.
say village.
Okay, answer. You know it. All
My
right.
uncles are going to be like, no,
Is it
that
a
is a
city
town.
now? Is it?
They'll say that's a city. Let's just call it something.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, we used
Look at the
to.
smile on your face, just
Yeah.
taking you back.
Oh no, we've tried that before, calling it a village to my uncles, and you don't want to see the
No,
look on your face.
I know.
But
Things
yeah,
have
so we
moved
would
on
go
now.
every December.
Okay.
And I think if we relate that to some of the research that we've done, there are times when immigrants, when they come to Canada and they try as much as possible to separate their children from the culture that they come
Yeah,
from.
yeah.
Now, sometimes, and we also know that there are some people in Nigeria, for example, that, their children does not know how to speak, only knows how to speak English.
Oh, yeah.
And not their language. There's a colonial mentality.
My sister, our children, they live in Ibadan. Our children speak English.
English. We know from the literature and from the research that children that are able to speak more than one language have a better
They're
brain
healthier
development.
mentally.
They are more likely to be more brilliant.
Okay.
In intellectual development. So it's actually sometimes there's a benefit to infusing your culture to your children and letting them understand to some extent
Dr.
your culture.
Salami, when I am from the UK, but when I got to the UK I was a black belt in karate. I'd done my first degree in law. I spoke Yoruba fluently, but I didn't feel seen. No one cared that I spoke any other language. And at that time, in 2001, I had a diploma in French. That was never, ever, all the work interviews I went to, it was never seen. So how do I now, as a matter of fact, my daughter is not going to learn any language until she speaks Yoruba. So how do because for me,
it wasn't, yes.
It wasn't ever recognized.
Yes.
Maybe Canada is different, is it?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? I mean, now if I tell anyone I speak Yoruba, it's like, okay, that language we all speak.
Because you're better off with Yoruba and English. That's the argument, that we are both better off because we speak more than one language.
Well, you're more likely. It increases child's brain development when they're exposed to more than one language.
All right.
But the question I think you're asking is, yes, it increases child brain development, but if you actually are able to speak it, does it actually help you in the workforce?
Has it done?
I mean, unless it's French and English, that is when it helps you in the
I mean, the broader question is, you find Indians and Chinese, they all speak their mother tongue in addition to English, and it keeps their community together.
Yes.
They have a sense of community. Is that the broader argument? Is that where we're going?
Well, yes, not just in terms of the language, but I think in terms of community belonging. So as I said, we know that community belonging. When we did our analysis of Statistics Canada database, there were different points where we considered different variables. And no matter what we consider, the two strongest factors were community belonging and income. When people have a sense of belonging and a sense of connection, then they are more likely to report a better mental health status. So it's just the same with African communities, that if we're able to, and sometimes that having a sense of cultural identity, sometimes will help in terms of contributing to a sense of community belonging, especially when you're able to socialize with people of your culture.
A lot of the cultural thing we do is in our churches. Does that help? Is there a link between mental well-being, attending a church that is cultural?
I haven't really seen things related to church, but I know one thing is when we did our interviews with African immigrant parents, and we ask them about the role of,
Church.
not the role of church. If they have a problem with your child, who do they talk to?
Okay.
First, they may talk to that grandma that is in Nigeria and say, how can you help me with blah, blah, blah? Or that sister that is in UK or in the US and, talk about their child. And then the other thing they probably will talk to is their church, their pastor at church, right? So I think this is a place, pastors are a group that we've not really, really capitalized on a lot.
On how they help the mental health
and
of
how they
immigrants.
help not just the mental health, social well-being. They do a lot of work in the community, and they're also thought leaders, right?
That's right, yeah.
The pastor stands on the pulpit and says, this is the way you should live your life, and now people go study and try and start living their life like that. And I think they can be really instruments of change and also increasing well-being within the community. So that's one thing that we've not tapped on a lot. They do a lot of good and positive work.
They do.
Yeah.
I don't disagree, but a drawback is some pastors walk you towards heaven, not on earth. So you're going to heaven, but you're living in hell.
Yeah.
And that's a disconnect for me.
I agree that, there are times when some people are ordered within the church. I remember there was, a woman that I interviewed that she had a baby, and, other people have had babies and, she's, gone to baby showers. She's, done really good work with, supporting new mothers with baby. And when she had a baby, no one
showed up for her.
No one showed her. No one supported her. Why? Because she wasn't married when she had the baby.
Okay,
and now she was ordered. So there are some practices that,
When you say ordered, what do you mean?
She was like castaway.
All right.
Like seen as a castaway because of that experience.
Okay.
So the thing is, there are ways where churches contribute meaningfully.
Yeah.
And build, and we also have to be also aware of the ways sometimes that institutions and churches may not, be as supportive in terms of supporting immigrants.
Okay, let's talk about the mental health of immigrant children, our children. How bad is this situation? Is it bad?
Okay, I will give you a surprise.
Okay.
So we just did, and this is not out yet, we just did an analysis of mental health of immigrant children, again using the Statistics Canada database. So I told you we did one on adults, that was 15 to 80, and we did 17,000 participants. This one was children. Oh, I'm okay. This one was children between the age of, I think, 3 to 18 or so, and we analyzed immigrant versus non-immigrant children.
Okay.
And we found that immigrant children actually reported better mental health status.
No.
Than
Really?
non-immigrant children.
Okay.
And if you look at, when people actually, if you really go into the literature, you will find that on average, now this is not second generation immigrants. So we're only looking at those that were not immigrant children that were not born in Canada and they were, brought into Canada.
So they've come here with good values. They've come here with maybe a hustling spirit.
I'm not sure. It's possible. So they actually report a better mental health status, but we should take caution.
Okay.
Because we've lumped all immigrant children together, and you're never sure in terms of the influence of race on that. Are you looking at a lot of immigrant children that are Caucasian? A lot of blacks, many of the research that has done has found that now when you look at immigrants and, African immigrant children, especially those African immigrant children from refugee background, their mental health is much poorer.
That's right,
than other children.
Well, that's obvious, isn't
it? So yes, when we look at immigrants and non-immigrants together, in some of the literature and in some of the work that we've done, we'll see that immigrants are better. But then when you start actually doing subgroup analysis within that, then you start saying, okay, not the same for black children, not the same for African children, not the same, for people with refugee backgrounds.
All right. Could you please speak to this idea that there is no data for visible minorities? This is what has influenced your work?
Yeah.
I read on the CBC that when it comes to things that affect our African communities, there's just no data to form policies, no data to plan for the future. There's just no data.
I would say, when we did
true?
our analysis of 17,000 immigrants
Yeah.
in Canada, and we wanted to do a sub-level analysis. And I had researchers from across the globe working on this, including one researcher from Norway. She was very, very, focused on let's look at ethnic differences. Let's look at how does the health status of a black person compare with a Caucasian person, compare with this. So as I
So
said,
the conversation is happening already.
the conversation is happening already.
Okay.
But then we got to the lab and we tried to do this analysis.
Okay.
We didn't have enough sample size. So our sample was not strong enough to be able to do a sub-analysis of the data.
Okay.
And that's because of the representation of black people within that survey that was done.
Okay, there were not enough black people.
There
to
was
take
not
part.
enough ethnic groups
Okay.
within
To
that.
form.
So I think, what can we do as black people is really, really engaging in research that may be responsive, that will be responsive to our needs.
Okay.
So we need more data. We need more data, for example, related to mental health of black people, related to different issues that black people face, and also not just in terms of data, but we need to also test interventions
All right.
that have been useful. So right now, I am a member of the Public Health Agency of Canada and Black Canadian Mental Health Working Group, and we're thinking about the Public Health Agency of Canada just released a call to do interventions in different communities related to black mental health. So I would say, one of the implications of that is it possible for black communities to participate, black individuals participate in that, so that then we can see, okay, what interventions work for black communities and who does it work with better than who.
I say, you are the distinguished scholar. We'll leave,
Oh.
we'll leave the hard work there in collecting and analyzing data to you. So talking about the African immigrant community, what do we need to change as parents? How should our behavior change? So when we are dealing with maybe bad behavior in our families, with our children, we're not calling our grandmothers in Nigeria, in Africa, to give us guidance on how to fix wayward kids.
Yeah. Well, in terms of there are lots of things. I mean, we cannot say everything is just based on what African parents should do. There's what African parents should do. There's what the community should do. There's what the service providers should do.
All right.
And there's also what policymakers should do. So, for example, as African parents, one thing is the kind of attachment that we have with our kids very early on. And also, how we deal with our kids, that, there are some things that work in Nigeria or work in Africa that may not work as great in Canada. So one thing that has been a place of big contention is the issue about spanking and discipline.
Okay.
And some people will talk about discipline and say,
well, that's a Nigerian thing. That's a biblical thing, isn't it?
well, I'm not sure. There is a biblical thing about spare the rod.
The devil is in the heart of a child.
Yeah. There are people. Yeah. Well,
chase it out.
Which is, and people talk about that, right?
Yeah.
But is it also possible that, so for example, I tell people, my mom, I was raised in Nigeria, spent my first 16 years in Nigeria and then came here. My mom has not once beaten me before.
There are 5 girls, right?
There's 5 of us.
Yeah, but girls are compliant. my mom never beat me too.
My mom never raised his hand, and I'm like...
Was your dad a part of your life?
My dad was part of my life early on.
All right.
No, actually, my dad has always been a part of my life, and it still is part of my life.
But
But
girls are compliant, Dr. Salami. Girls are not. Nigerian, we're growing up. I have three sisters as well, and we're all compliant.
but it is also possible that there's
Yeah.
a male there,
No, we're
that they're
four girls.
but that their parent has not beaten them before,
Yeah.
and they still turn up good.
Okay, could it be
Now,
not
one
DNA?
thing,
I don't know.
yes, but I
All right.
think one thing to consider is, I think our goal is we want to correct the child.
Yes.
Is there a way that we can correct the child that will
Without
work
using the rod.
without using the rod? That we can still, kind of redirect the child in positive ways without using the rod. And there are different ways, that could be done. I have always thought that one of the challenges that we face as African parents is this fear about 911 and social services coming to take our
Coming
children.
into our business. All
Because
right.
there are things that we can learn from the system about how to properly take care of our children and how to correct our children's behavior that we can find and go there. Have people, but a lot of times you don't want to even mention it or try to explore this issue because you're afraid that if you explore it, it's going to be 911 next at your door. So
that's about educating our children, our parents as well. Listen, it's a question.
It's about educating our parents. So I think you were at the Conversation Cafe.
I was.
That we did. So we did a Conversation Cafe, and we had some medical doctors, students that were trained to be pediatrician, and we also had experts. Help in terms of delivering some Conversation Cafes about discipline, about parenting, nutrition, and different things. And we learned so much things related to positive discipline, related to correcting the children's behavior. For example, it's not the child that is bad. It is the behavior of the child that may or may not be the best. So, small tips like that, spending time with your children, things
as
like that
help. Working,
yes, and things like that help.
Hours.
And things like that help in terms of, promoting the health and well-being of children.
I was at the cafe, and what I did say was, there's nothing wrong with disciplining a child because sometimes a child understands better with a smack, and it's just when it's overdone. All right, because my dad used the cane on me once or twice. I'm not going to opera.
Yeah.
I'm not a broken person because of it, and I cannot remember my mom ever slapping me or touching me so one, it's neither here nor there, but I suppose it's also moderation.
Yes.
Parents should not damage children whilst disciplining them.
Yes. But do you remember also there was a lady in the room that mentioned
Dr.
one thing?
King, yeah.
No, it
No,
wasn't
one of the
Dr. King. There was
participants.
another participant that mentioned one thing.
Yeah.
She mentioned about some of the stresses our children face
At school.
within the system. So yes, you're using the cane on the child, but is it the child's fault in terms of what you're doing, or is it going to change anything, right, related to what the child is doing? So,
Dr. Salami, this is where we'll probably end this, but I remember that cafe and I remember that comment because it broke my heart. And what the lady said was this, if I remember correctly, that some of our children experience being invisible, they experience racism and discrimination at school. And when they behave, when they react, it may be because they're trying to respond to what's going
other
on
stresses
in there.
going on.
Okay, so that's fine. I get that. And then I purpose in my heart that I would volunteer that we parents should get engaged, find out what's going on in our children's schools, be a part of the conversation, be a part of their lives. I get that. All I suppose I'm trying to say is there's a time and place. We cannot. I won't accept that everything my daughter does exhibits positively or negatively is as a result of racism. That would excuse a lot of her own bad behavior. And then she'll get away maybe with murder, and I'm still blaming some unseen third party. Do you understand?
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Yes. But yes, so yes, not every single thing children do are racism.
Yeah.
And also not every single, not the only option to discipline a child is not the rod.
I
So
accept. I
there's,
accept.
yes,
I'm the one saying this, but I cannot even remember last time I laid my own hands on
yeah,
my daughter because she has earned my respect. She earns my
yeah.
respect, and now she understands the I, the silent word. She understands the change in my voice, the change in my behavior, the stare. She understands all that.
And those are some of the things. So the thing is, you're doing, the,
African way.
well, you say, wait, you say the African way.
African way, the
But wait,
stare.
you're doing the African, see,
Yeah.
you're doing the African way,
Yes.
but at the same time, the African way, because I know my mom too. My mom
Yeah.
knows how to tell you that's where you should go, that's where
Yeah,
you
she's
shouldn't
using
go.
her eyes today.
That's
And
not
you
good.
know.
And you know, right?
Yeah.
And you know. So when we are saying that there are things that are good about our
Yeah.
culture that we have to embrace, it's those type of things,
All
right?
right,
So there is the
absolutely.
rod, right?
Yeah.
There's the rod.
Yeah.
And the rods, they say, okay, the rod is not, the researchers say it's not good, right? So, but then we still have this,
Well, the other- yeah,
African way of
yeah.
saying,
Okay.
this is how you go. This is,
The
this,
moderation
yeah, the
there
moderation thing.
can
So,
be a good thing to pick
so
up
there are
from.
still ways that we can, and I think, valuing respect and teaching our children respect
Yeah.
is an African way, and it is something
And that's
that we
a good
should
thing
still
as
continue
well.
to instill.
Mm.
So yes, I mean, if I see there are some of people that are my mom's age, I will not call them, Kemi, right?
Yeah.
Like you would do here and say Linda, right? You will say
It's just
mommy.
wrong, isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
just wrong,
It's
right?
just
It's the
wrong.
African way, it's the respect way, and I
Yeah.
think those are the things that we can
I
instill.
mean, even within that, there's the hypocrisy as well, isn't
Yes.
it? And I've seen it. A person you use anti for, they disrespect themselves,
Yes.
disrespecting you. You think, why am I even calling you?
Yes, yes.
How am I expecting you like this? One final question, Dr. Salami, is have you experienced, it doesn't seem like you have, it seems to me when I look at your life, you've conquered every obstacle.
Not every.
The optics
Yeah.
are very good. Have you experienced this racism or discrimination that some people call the Canadian, as part of the Canadian experience, disadvantage? Has that come near your world at all?
Of course.
Of course.
Of course. Lots, lots, lots.
Okay.
Discrimination experience. But the thing is, a few things that has helped me to
All
get
right.
here is I am a long-term focused person. So I don't focus on the immediate short term. I think forward. So, I remember I came to the faculty here and, I always had my diagram of my 5-year plan, of where I will be in the 5-year plan. But at the same time, so I am a person that I may not think about what's going to happen tomorrow, but I may be thinking about what's going to happen in 5 years' time.
Okay.
And I prioritize 5-year plans over a short-term plan.
Okay.
The other thing that I always do is I have backup plans,
Okay.
right? So, yes, this, I may have this plan, but I'm also going to kind of have a backup plan, but not be too quick to jump to the backup plan.
Okay.
So, so in most things I do, there is if this doesn't work, there's, that's where we're going to
It's
go.
always worked. It's always worked.
It's not that it's always worked. It's that it's always something did not work and the backup plan worked. And then it seemed like it did work, but no, there was a first plan that did not work and the backup plan worked. The other thing, in terms of racism, I have experienced it.
At the
lot
U
of
of A
people.
or just in other places?
Everywhere.
All right.
Everywhere. A lot of people have, experienced racism. I would say that my experience related to racism within this faculty has been much better than any of my other experiences. So
Even at University of Toronto?
I would say my experience at U of A is much better.
Oh, okay.
The thing is, I tend not to focus on the small things of life.
Okay, there you go. That's the beast again
Yes.
talking. That's the big
I
Dr.
don't,
Salami talking. All right.
I don't tend to focus on, but so if you want me to give you examples,
Okay.
I can give you a lot of examples
All
of
right.
racism.
Okay.
But
Oh no, no.
but I think but at the same time, I think as academics, we also have a task in terms of challenging those things that maybe some may not be.
Maybe it's not what it seems.
Yeah, and there are some. No, I think we also still have to challenge it. So I don't let it affect me too much because I don't like it to drag me down. But at the same time, I know it exists,
All right.
and I think I should also be part of the solution to solving it.
Oh, Dr. Bukola Salami, thank you very much for your time.
No problem.
Thank you very much. Okay, oopsie. All right, so we are with OSAS next week, Edmonton Natural Air Show. This is a wrap-up from Dr. Bukola Salami and myself.
Thank you.
At the University of Alberta. Let's take a look at where we are actually. This is the nursing lab. Just so you see, this is like, can you see what I'm saying? Can you see all the beds? Okay, now I need to move. All right, so, yeah. Okay. Bye.